Well, I would say it this way, that there is a difference between strength and size. A knife might be small and a melon is big, but in all situations, the knife will always win that fight. So I think it's a proverb which tells us that you need to be aware of all situations and assess whether you're the knife or you're the melon, and do what is necessary.
Well, I've never had to think whether I'm a knife or a melon, but that is quite an apt explanation.
That's interesting how the human mind works, because usually we're here sitting thinking about the person getting hurt.
Yeah.
As opposed to you, are you the one who's being proactive? Or are you the one who has the power, essentially? So I think quite an apt one. You clearly in the right position when we talk about interpretation. So in enhancing access to justice, the Chief Justice has been quite deliberate and intentional in making sure that Kenyans actually do have access to justice, and that justice is brought from this place up here and delivered right to the doorstep of our needs on a daily basis. And we can see that in the establishment of tribunals. We made a joke last week that, throw something at it and there's a tribunal for everything. And I think that's a good thing, because then people don't have to be wrapped up in courts that take time, and that maybe need to deal with not more weighty or more serious, but then other issues, and that tribunals can actually do that. So we've seen the importance of them. Now, the Land Acquisition Tribunal, I think, probably is, one of those things that gets a big A+ because of the conversation that we just had before you came, Honorable Lorena, and that the possession that people have with land usually needs some kind of justice guidance. So we want to have a little bit of an understanding at the first of what the tribunal is, what it does, and then we can get into a little bit more of the issues that then they actually adjudicate.
Thank you very much. The Land Acquisition Tribunal essentially deals with the aspect of land that is where the government decides to acquire land for its projects. And as we know, the government always has its development projects around the country, infrastructural, in most cases. And in order to do those projects, the government will need to acquire private land, privately owned land, so that then it can expand the roads, the airports, etc. So in doing this, the government then will take this land and exercise a concept known as eminent domain, and this is where the government can take your land without you saying that it's okay, they can take your land. They take it whether you like it or not. But then the Constitution says that if government takes your land in that way, then they have to compensate you promptly. So then this is where the tribunal steps in that in doing this function of acquiring land on behalf of government or state agencies is placed upon the National Land Commission. So the National Land Commission will assess and find out who the owners of the land is, where the road should pass, and then it will determine how much they should be compensated. Sometimes they will probably not find, the owner who they are looking for, or they will determine someone else as the owner, or they'll determine a certain figure which the owner will not be satisfied with. So that's when now the person who's affected by this project has a right to come to the tribunal and say, look, you stated that you would acquire 2 acres of my land, but the road has passed through 4 acres and I was only compensated for 2 acres. Then the tribunal can conduct an inquiry, can conduct a hearing and hear this case and make a determination, essentially on appeal of the decision of the National Land Commission that conducted this acquisition. So the tribunal focuses chiefly on acquisitions which happen for the benefit of the government, state projects. Yes.
Okay. So then a tiff between Dennis and Mark then over land essentially would not be brought before the tribunal?
No, the tribunal does not deal with disputes over, private individuals over land, over ownership disputes. Those would essentially lie with the Environment and Land Court, and in some instances before the Chief Magistrates Courts. Yes.
Okay. So here's a question where there is the agreement that X amount of land would be taken by the government, but the government as well takes the stated size of land, but there is always the problem when it comes to compensation, because the government would take forever to compensate, which is a problem, because someone says, you are already using my land, I no longer have access to this land because the government rightfully owns it. How do you deal with such matters and ensuring that even as the matters continue coming to you, that the government does what is right by the people?
Mm-hmm. Indeed, it's a very important issue that has always come to our tribunal. And this essentially flows from the provisions of the Constitution under Article 40, sub-Article 3, where the Constitution says that, the state shall not deprive a person of their land unless, such deprivation will lead to compensation, which will be adequate and prompt. So the aspect of promptness, and it has also been dealt with under the Land Act, is the requirement that if someone's land is taken, then you need to pay that person within a very short period, so that they don't suffer, double despondency, where indeed they've been displaced from their land and they are not able to even fend for themselves. And the law requires that you should do this essentially within 1 year. And that actually forms the bulk of most of the disputes that come before us, because someone will say that my land was taken 4 years ago, a road has been built, that road has been completed, but the compensation has not come. So for us, the inquiry we conduct and the cases we conduct are to ask, then why is this compensation for this person? And in some cases, you'll find that there was a budget allocation for this, or the budget ran out. Then it's upon us to make a determination that indeed this money should have been paid within this period. And the tribunal has power to order that the money that should have been paid 4 years ago should now be paid with the interest that it has earned over this period, because this person is entitled to that, and his rights have been violated.
Okay.
I'm very glad to hear this. And the question I have, and it's twofold actually. Number one, it's one thing to take the government to court, but the government is not an institution you can attach its properties, walk into the Ministry of Land and take 10 trucks and say, this is compensation for my land. So you may make a ruling, but what then compels the government to pay? That's my first question. And my second question, there was once a fire at the Kenya Lands Commission when there was an EACC anti-corruption thing going on. And where the corruption was, and now this is on the side of government, was when we were building the SGR, there was coalition between commissioners and the landowners to increase the value of the land to charge the government more. So one side, how do you make sure the government pays? And then how do you make sure that the deal being done between the individual landowner and the government is within the expected parameters of the value of land and the best case interest of the Republic?
Very well. I think you raised two very important matters. And the first matter is, how do you make the government to pay even when you've made such orders? For us, we look at the law. For instance, I can give you one example that we dealt with. A case comes before the tribunal where clearly we could see that there was no government provision, there was no budget for this project. Yeah. And I can tell you that the tribunal has, in some matters, stated that that project cannot go on. Because if you are saying that a project is worth 20 billion, and the aspect of compensation for the landowners is a fraction of it, 2 billion. But you're prioritizing building the project, for the public good. But you are forgetting that the most essential part is at least to compensate those whose lands you've taken. The tribunal has powers to order that, until this compensation is paid, this project, it can be stayed until the money for the compensation is released and it's paid. And in some instances, of course, we do understand that government goes through budgetary processes, and even when a case comes to us that some money has not been released, we do take into consideration that, and we give timelines within which compensation should happen before certain steps are taken. So we take that into account. And the second question that you ask, how do you then ensure that there's no pilferage of public coffers when compensation happens? Indeed, the work of the National Land Commission, which is an independent commission, and I believe there have been issues before, the investigations that you talk about, is to ensure that when such compensation is happening, then they do not, overpay somebody or underpay somebody. And indeed, for instance, the EACC's role is to ensure that such corruption does not occur. For our case, the cases that come to the tribunal is where someone is asking that they've been underpaid. So we wouldn't be in a position to examine cases where there is potential overpayment or overvaluation, because those would not necessarily come to us where we would have to ask that.
So, as an independent citizen, if I think Aseto has been paid 300 million for his 1 acre in which village again?
Kanyamkago North.
Kanyamkago North. And he's been paid 300 million for it. And I, as a private citizen, are concerned that is an overpayment. I cannot bring that to the tribunal?
No, you can't. But there are many agencies you can take that to. And those agencies...
Please don't say EACC.
One of them, sorry.
No, I'm joking. EACC, I apologize. Yes, you are the right institution.
Yes, indeed, it is the right institution.
But, Honorable, now, there's a matter of the government, before any project goes down, it has been planned, there is budget allocations and everything that happens. One would want to ask, before the project starts, why not compensate me before you get to do that? Because one would argue the government would go ahead and implement the project and think about compensation later. Can compensation be a priority first before the implementation of the project? That's number one. Question number two would be, if it's a project that has taken 4 years to be completed, my compensation has delayed for 4 years. If I was to be paid 200 million 4 years ago, 200 million is not the same amount 4 years later. How do you deal with such issues?
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, in recognizing that there is a need to prioritize payment of the project affected persons, Parliament, in coming up with the Land Act, specified that before any state agency acquires land, or it must deposit the money for that project for the compensation with the National Land Commission, because the National Land Commission acts on behalf of the agencies that are going to acquire land. So it is the duty of the National Land Commission to ensure that before they gazette an intention to acquire, they have the money. And that is what the law says. So in circumstances where you find that such has happened, because some projects might have some urgency towards them, that we need, to build this security infrastructure here, and we need it now. So we need the commission to gazette the acquisition, and we need to move into this space immediately. Because sometimes you find that a gazettement can happen of acquisition of particular parcels of land for building of a road project, but they don't take possession immediately. This road will take 2-3 years. So before they come to your parcel of land, it's 3 years later, even if it was gazetted for acquisition. But in situations where there's urgency, and this is where then there is need for the National Land Commission to be more proactive in terms of engaging with the agency that is acquiring, that you must provide the money before we move into somebody's land. And that is what the law provides. The law provides that money must be ascertained. Even if it's not physical money that has been transferred, you must be shown that there is money for this project before you give an approval. Because if government wants to acquire, and government, by this I mean the county government or the national government, any of the agencies, they ask for the National Land Commission It's the one empowered by the Constitution and the law to acquire on their behalf. But the National Land Commission has a number of things they must tick. Is there money? Is this project necessary? Could it be done somewhere else before they give an approval? And at least those are the safeguards and under the law
that are put in.
Yeah.
Sorry, please go ahead.
It was on the second aspect of, fine, you've taken my land, you have delayed to pay me, but the value of that 200 million today is not the value 4 years later. So how would you deal with that? Because it is a legitimate concern.
Indeed. The law actually thought about that and indicates that if compensation is not paid immediately, that money should be put in an interest earning account. Because there could be circumstances where a parcel of land is taken, but this parcel of land has a dispute between you and Bukachi on who the owner is. So what do you do with that money? You don't pay it to any of them until that dispute is resolved. But you put that money in an interest earning account, and at the end of once that dispute has been resolved, whether it's 5 years from now, that person who was entitled to that should be paid that money with the interest. And the problem is that you cannot pay the person the value of the land at that time, 5 years later. Because sometimes you find that a project passes through a village where the value of land was 10,000. That parcel of land, 2 years after that project, becomes $1 million. But the law requires that compensation shall be the value at the time the acquisition happened. So you cannot pay someone later after the project has passed through.
So this is interesting because we talk about what the law says, and you say, Honorable Arena, that you cannot pay somebody according to what the law says, and that one would expect that government then is one of the highest upholders of the law, or should be. And in these cases, this is government essentially that's being brought to the tribunal. So this paints the scenario, but let's talk about a real situation. A couple of months ago, what did we hear? That folks who should have been compensated because the SGR, which is operational in Kenya today, has passed through their land. There is money that was gotten in order for this project to be developed. So it's not a question of whether the money was there. And when we asked questions about why was the SGR so expensive, we hear that one of the big ticket items in that expense was the compensation of land that was taken from people. And yet, these people, I don't know how many years down the line, are yet to be compensated. So, is this something that is before the tribunal or would be brought before the tribunal? And if we say that we are waiting for the money to come, not possible, because guess what? The SGR has been built, so that means the money came. So why have these folks not been compensated, and what can be done? I mean, it's people all along the line of the SGR.
Indeed, and unfortunately, some of the cases we're handling today are SGR related. A project that commenced more than eight years back.
Yes, 2013.
Yes, but some of the issues around that project and compensation were issues of land ownership and verification of who the owners were, because of different land tenure systems. We find that you could, in the city, be having a title to your parcel of land, but some of the parcels of land in the villages are owned either communally or through some other arrangements where persons do not have the proper documentation. And we have instances where, in trying to verify and to find out who are the persons entitled to compensation, the commission could not do, exactly verify at that particular time. And some of those persons, because they come from very remote areas, they not really have quick access to the courts and to ensure that their rights are enforced. But with the coming into law of the tribunal, which has been there now for a year and a half, a number of them have come to the tribunal, and we have been able to resolve some of those disputes and indeed untangle the money that was is still within the accounts of the National Land Commission for their compensation.
Would the tribunal not then be able to immediately ask government and demand immediately as to why you've not compensated these people, rather than for them to be entangled in this process of asking why? Because it seems very clear cut.
Indeed, it is, and sometimes you find that it's a situation where, and not all the cases where people have not been compensated. You find a situation where someone was compensated, but someone comes later and says, "But I should be the one who should have been compensated." And not all the cases are genuine. Where 3 weeks ago, we had to dismiss a case where someone wanted compensation for the same parcel of land where they were compensated. The same persons who were compensated as individuals later formed a company and said, "Well, our property
now that
was
you're compensating
taken.
people,
We were the owners of this property." You find that the company was established in the year 2018, but the same individuals were compensated in the year 2014, and we find that there's no basis for the claim. So there could be other genuine claims, but others are, of course, not very genuine.
I'm not sure this is a question or I'm using, but I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, land disputes, who issues title deeds? Government. I'm thinking payments were late, who makes payments late? Government. I am thinking who is supposed to make sure the budget is there so that people are paid on time? Government. I'm thinking who is the person who's taken to court the most? Government. Question: as good a job as your tribunal is doing, would it exist if the Land Commission did its job?
And I think as well, as it's just a right on that. As he asks that question, my question again would be, with all these laws that are there, government is the custodian and the one who understands the law best than any other individual. Why does it look as though they just decide to go against what the law prescribes?
The land sector, I think it's very obvious, even from the news items that you talked about, is very complicated. And the National Land Policy of 2009, which proposed the establishment of the National Land Commission, was to take care of some of the issues that were arising out of compensation when it comes to compulsory acquisition of land. Previously, this was run by the Commission of Lands. There was an individual called the Commission of Lands.
Yes.
And it was a mess, how arbitrary it was. You could decide who gets compensated, how much gets compensated. And now those powers were given to an independent commission.
Yes.
I mean, the National Land Commission has been there for a number of years. But I'm not saying that if it did its job, the tribunal would not exist, but there are challenges it has experienced, in trying to streamline these aspects. And clearly the law is on their side, but also, certain challenges, even from the past, still keep following it up in terms of, a clear record of who owns what when it comes to land. Because when it comes to aspects of, compensating the wrong person, it's records that have been mixed up, two people having a title to the same parcel of land. Those are problems that have come from the past to come to haunt the work of the commission today.
Hold it, Mark.
Oh, I hate this time. Let me hold my heart.
Just for a minute. Let's take a break. And then we'll come back and look at this, because then the tribunal today in the present is dealing with issues that are historical in nature. And of course, Mark is bursting with that. We're going to come back and look into that. We're talking this morning with the Honorable Rena, and we're looking at certain issues around the Land Acquisition Tribunal. And he's a chairperson, and he's talking us through some of these things. It might just get a little bit sticky, but that's why we're here, to have and open up those conversations. 28 minutes to 8 o'clock. It's the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Back after this.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
To urban, local, and international gospel music videos, exclusive interviews with your favorite artists and Christian creatives, gospel news from around the globe, voices from across our nation on Street Vibes. And because we believe in freshness, new music from uprising gospel ministers, and not forgetting our top 5 countdown. Catch Gospel Full 100 every Sunday from 7 to 9, only on your #1 entertainment station, KTN. Remember, Nothing more, nothing less. We keep it gospel full 100.
As the eldest among the brothers, I am the first to carry on the family name and the weight that this holds. But beyond that, I am a man bound by responsibility to the people that I love. I am Sam Melby, and I play Dave Australia, the firstborn brother on the show Family Affair.
A family affair. Kenya thrives on agriculture and it's very fruitful. From the highlands that we grow our coffee and tea all the way to the resilient northeastern part with our livestock, and not forgetting the breadbasket in the Rift Valley.
If you're not able to meet an agronomist, you can even view channels whereby you can start from the bottom.
Maisha ya siku hizi ni kujituma. Hakuna haja kwenda kutafuta kazi, na kazi yenyewe iko hapa kwa mchanga.
At Farm Kenya, we celebrate those who make it happen. Farmers who innovate, adapt, and guess what? They're able to feed the nation. Together, we are growing nutrition.
Together, we are growing agriculture.
And together, we are growing Kenya.
Shiba, Utashiba, Fugo Calf Starter Pellets, Calf Grow Pencils, Heifer Grow, Dairy Milk Plus, and Maxi Milk Plus, products of Unga Farm Care.
Akishiba, Utashiba, Utashiba.
Application equals corrupt.
Yes, that's what we say about everything. You know, land matters are complicated. Healthcare is complicated. But, and I know we have remedial justice in this country, but I want you to wear the heart of your experience. Do you honestly think that if Kenya, not just the Land Commission or any other entity in charge of land, just dealt with the issue of corruption, that your tribunal will have an easier time?
Absolutely. I have no doubt that, especially in the land sector, if the officers who are responsible, especially for issuing of titles, authenticating title documents, could do their job, many of the cases that we're even seeing in court, or things, very bad things happening out there, would not be there. So it's a conversation that has to be had continuously in terms of what happens, especially to the persons who public trust has been placed on them in these offices, when they make certain decisions that affect people's lives and they do certain things that are corrupt. So I think that's something that we should focus on. What are the consequences? We have seen courts many times saying that there were 3 title deeds issued on this parcel of land, trying to dispossess some old family of their land. But what are the consequences of the people who did that? I think we're not seeing more of that, and we should be seeing more of that to streamline things.
In fact, that was my last question to you. Yes. It's okay to say government delayed. It's okay to say people were paid less, late, etc. Does your tribunal have the ability to hold to account the individuals? Because see, the commission is not one person. Do you have the ability to go to the source in government, not this amorphous thing called government, and say, Ndu, you were in charge of Maralal, and the road went through Maralal, and these complaints we are seeing, they all originate from your office. So can we hold you personally accountable? Because it's good to pay back someone. That's very good. I'd like to have my money. But it's good to go back to the source and tell Ndu, Maralal is not your village, is not your mom's house, that you can do what you want. So Ndu, this is what you're paying for. Do you have that extent of power?
We do have in certain instances, for instance, where a case comes before the tribunal. I can talk about, there was a project in Mutomo, Kibwezi, a road project done years ago, and the persons are saying that over 2 billion has not been paid to the project affected persons. This is a matter we've seen that has gone even to Parliament, you know, and there have been a lot of conversations, and the acquiring authority in that case is actually part of the case in the tribunal, where, you know, the questions are being asked. Where is this money? The commission would say that the money, as part of the money was transferred, but, you know, the remainder of the money was never transferred. So we have involvement of all the agencies that are involved, especially in terms of, you know, putting the money for these projects. And this makes it easy to resolve the case at the end of the day by saying that, okay, some of the money was paid, some was not paid, and you find that such cases are resolved even before they end up in trial. I mean, I saw in the news that that very case that we had, money has been released now, you know, through different efforts to bring people to account, to ensure that you know, what should have been done, you know, should be done. And we have the powers to summon officers before our tribunal to answer these questions in terms of you know, why is this not being released, and clearly to give a timelines in terms of what should be done to compensate, especially persons whose lands have been taken.
Honorable Lorena, one would, as let me just put it blatantly. Does the tribunal have powers to say, Aseto, you broke the law, spend time or pay back the money that has not been paid? That's number one. Number two, in terms of the government has been seen to be breaking the law, your tribunal will make decisions and give court orders that need to be upheld by the same government that broke this law. What is the rate of successes in terms of compliance with court orders that come from your tribunal? Because then again, we've seen the government itself not respecting court orders.
Well, it's always a slow process, especially when it comes to monetary issues, where if money had not been set aside, or if a project had proceeded, money was exhausted, and there's need for, you know, budgeting for more money. So sometimes it might take a few months because most of the orders are about compensation or finding the right party to compensate. But in some cases, you find that the money is actually there, but it's a question of the money is not being given to this party because they're not satisfied that it's the right party to pay. So we get to resolve issues of who should be paid certain monies. But where money was not allocated, it has taken a while, but there are steps that are actively being undertaken to, you know, to ensure that the money is paid, because we wouldn't be, you know, worth the work that we're doing if our orders were in vain. So at least we have aspects of where, you know, how to ensure that certain court orders are complied with.
Okay. So, I mean, we know what the tribunal does. We're understanding that it's government, and that if you had particular claims, you could bring it. But then, where do we start? Now, let's look at brick and mortar and procedural issues. There's little old me and my 3 acres, or my family 10 acres, whatever may be, and part of that land has been taken, whether there was notice or not, as you established at the beginning. But where do I begin? Because here I am as little old me, and I'm dealing with this monster that is government. How do I start? By bringing my case to the tribunal? Do I need representation? Can I come as I am? How do we begin?
Thank you for that. The tribunal, and indeed many other tribunals, as you indicated at the beginning, before in the judiciary, have simplified procedures where you're able to file your case, and now with the e-filing system, where you can file online from whichever corner you are, because it's a national tribunal, which means that today we can be hearing a case from Malindi, and tomorrow we'll be hearing a case from Nyatike constituency, where there are many claims in regard to the irrigation scheme there. You either can get a lawyer and to reduce your complaint, you know, into a format that will be able to clearly explain what the issue is and file it. And once it has been filed, then we seized of it and we give directions in terms of the responses that we require in instances where we need to come to you because your parcel of land is, is in a place that was affected by the Lower Kuja irrigation scheme, and you are just one of the many other villagers who are affected, and you are not able to even come and find this tribunal that is being talked about. We can come to you. We've come to the site. We do site visits to see the situation on the ground, to talk to the persons affected, and ensure that at least they have access to the tribunal. And that's why tribunals then are part of that access to justice, promotion of the access to justice, by being efficient, by being accessible to anybody who would like to, to bring a matter before us. So the online portal helps, but it might not be accessible to everyone, and that's why then we have assistance from our shared services of the tribunals, a secretariat which is able to assist in any way to anybody who needs assistance to be able to do filing.
And where are those? Because I'm going to go to the example that you used about the person who is in Kibwezi or Interior. How do they have access to the secretariat? How do we even begin to know? Because for me, that's what real access to justice looks like. Is there an office somewhere at the ward level? Is there somebody that I can go and have a conversation with? How does that play out?
And how much is it?
Yes, indeed. So what the tribunals are doing, and they have what is called the shared services, which is an office that would represent all tribunals, and anybody who wishes to have a matter related to any tribunal, whether it's a business premises, rent issue, or the land acquisition, would come to that. And this is being devolved. In a few weeks' time, I think 2 weeks' time, a shared services center will be opened in Kisumu. And the intention at the end of the day is to ensure that where court stations are, you can walk to a court station, which is the nearest to you, and you can ask, how can I file this matter at the Land Acquisition Tribunal? And the person you meet there at a desk will be able to guide you, to tell you that you can do this, you can have your documents scanned, and we can assist you to upload them. And that is the intention eventually, to ensure that even though these courts, these tribunals are not at every location or every county across the country, you are able to find somebody at a desk to tell you that if you have a claim, you can be assisted to upload it, to file it, and then after that, if you do not have a computer or a phone, to log in online, you can come to that center where we have gadgets for you to be able to sit and be seen by the tribunal and address the tribunal. And we have had that, where we have had cases filed and persons have gone to Kisumu and they've been put in a room and they are able to follow proceedings virtually, even when we have not been able to go to the ground.
So how much is it?
Oh, the cost, yes. Most of the claims have the minimal 1,000 bob for filing, other than the very high liquidated claims. If you're claiming $1 billion from government for land that was taken, it's about 70,000. So the maximum is 70,000, but most of the claims are the minimum filing cost.
Honorable Lorena, with the tribunals in place, there is this aspect of how Kenyans view the judiciary, pretty much. It's the reason why you find many don't want to go to the judiciary, because of the backlogs that do exist and whatnot. So how is the tribunal changing the face in and promising Kenyans that when you bring your matter to us, we will dispense with it at the fastest time possible and ensure that the matter is heard?
Indeed, and specifically, if I may talk about the Land Acquisition Tribunal, the law requires us that from the time a matter is filed, we should determine the matter within 2 months. Of course, there could be instances where, there could be, the tribunal might extend that time because certain documents have not been found, because it's a case that was done it's an acquisition that was done in 2008 before even the National Land Commission came about. And you need to retrieve documents from the former Commissioner of Lands office, which is now the Ministry of Lands. And in that situation, it might take slightly longer, maybe up to 3 months. But from our rates in terms of our statistics, from the time we started operations in October of 2023 up to date, we've had over 144 cases filed.
Right.
But out of those, 94 have been resolved. And our turnaround is between 2 months to 3 months at most. So one thing that you can be assured of by going to a tribunal is that your case will be resolved within the quickest
time possible. So
and,
then,
and congratulations for
I
that.
think
By
that's
the
a
way.
great.
It's no mean feat.
90 days is not. I mean, because we have land issues, and when we talk about then individuals to individuals, we have land issues that have been wrapped up in court for 20 years and counting and going on beyond that. So I would say that's quite an incredible thing to be able to do, especially when you're dealing again with the monster that is government, right? So now here we are looking at other situations where we say, we have a case, and we know, or from tribunals, that matters arising in tribunals and that have been adjudicated and a judgment has been made are enforceable. They are enforceable, are they not?
They are.
So, and I am assuming within a period of time that if the case is to be found for Mark, and the government then needs to compensate him his 2 billion shillings, you.
Those are my figures.
Is there a statute? Is there a limitation on the time within which then this judgment then must be enforced? Or do you say we're going to give the government time to gather up their coins, or do we say with immediacy? How does that work?
It's on a case-to-case basis.
Okay.
There are certain circumstances where we're satisfied that indeed the money is there. We can make orders that within 30 days your money should be released to you.
Okay.
And in some instances, I think the maximum we say is within 3 months to ensure that at least the government gets its stuff in order and compensates the person. But it's up. The discretion is up to the tribunal to decide, looking at the circumstances within which time you should.
Okay,
ensure
but does it hear
compliance.
from government as well before you make that judgment? Because, I mean, isn't that the thing that we hear all the time? Because, again, we're dealing with government whereby we'll say, well, we can't send money for capitation because we just don't have enough just yet. We're going to gather up our coins and do that. We can't really pay for this because we are still gathering. We have to be real, haven't we, Honorable Arena? So even when the tribunal, because this is a tribunal insisting or demanding government to pay, whereby we've already been told that, resources are limited. So does the tribunal take into consideration the atmosphere of the day? One thing that I remember Justice Lanola saying a lot is that we take into consideration what is happening around. So do you take into consideration that we've heard CS Mbadi say, well, we don't have so much right now before a judgment is given, because that would seem that I would get the short end of the stick? Or does that not happen at all?
Well, even when times are tough for everybody, including government, there are aspects that must be enforced and must be upheld, and especially if it touches on violations of constitutional rights.
Okay.
Right to property, a person where you have evidence that a person has been displaced because we needed to do this road, then you must demand that this must be prioritized. And there is money for these projects, and if a project has been crafted, indeed there was a plan for it and they have to compensate.
So there is the aspect that you've just brought in terms of some of the cases that are being followed up. You have to go back to the former Commission of Land to get all these records, and there has been a conversation for a very long time on matters to do with records, digitizing it and whatnot, which again you depend on these documents to be able to dispense your matters. In conversations that you have with the Ministry of Land or the government in itself in just helping you do your work easier, is this a subject matter, and are you having conversations perhaps or even recommendations to the ministry in just having all this data well backed up and digitized? And if so, tumefika wapi?
It's indeed a challenge where you have to get such certain records. Of course, you have to deal first with the bureaucracies and also the unavailability sometimes of records, and sometimes you have nothing to work with, and you have to try piece together, what then was the situation here. And when you have cases going back, most of the time you'll find that a road happened, Thika Road, for instance. We have cases coming from Thika Road when it was being expanded.
Yes.
Yeah, and you'll find that at the time when that project was being done, there was it affected certain parcels of land, and then out of that project, the parcels affected had disputes, and that's why you find that the problems are late in coming to the tribunal were also entangled somewhere else. An ownership dispute that lasted another 10 years in court before it was resolved, and then once it was resolved, this person is coming, okay, now the courts have said I am the person who should have been paid. I'm coming to seek to be paid because I've written letters and nobody is responding. So then that's where we have to ask that, okay, these records need to be brought, and then they have to go back to in time. But with the coming into place of the National Land Commission, the records are now being are kept in a better way, and we're able to find and get responses. But even then, even records from back in the days, it just takes a bit of time, but they are there, and they certainly come to court when we demand for them.
Okay. What happens when government doesn't pay?
There is a procedure for someone who wishes to execute against government. Where then you get a certificate, and then try to go through the process of, seeking orders of mandamus, what is so-called mandamus, to have them pay. But it lengthens the process, unfortunately, for persons who are affected, where then you have to kind of undertake another new process to get paid. But in instances where we find that it's clear, this acquisition happened, this money should have been budgeted for, we find that it's much easier to deal with, rather than where it's another case where, for instance, someone sues the government for torture, and the government is told you need to pay this person 30-40 million or so. And it's lengthier, but I think for acquisition matters, because the land has already been taken, issues are very clear. It might take time, but persons do get paid.
So there are folks who are probably sitting on cases today. What would be your encouragement to them, or your advice to them, who say, well, okay, I don't know that I can go to the tribunal and sit through the waiting, and I don't know what the outcome will be, because that's what precludes a lot of folks from coming out anyway, fear of the unknown. What would you say to them?
Indeed. The tribunal, first, I would like to say that our jurisdiction is, I would say, threefold. The first jurisdiction where people appeal directly, and you're required to appeal within 30 days after decision of the National Land Commission has been made. But you might find someone who was not able to appeal within the 30 days because a decision on an award was made in the year 2020, and they were not even aware that their land was acquired or an award was given. So there is a mechanism of applying to extend time, and then the tribunal can consider that and allow you to come. There are also aspects, a very important aspect is where someone has a complaint, a general complaint that maybe their land was taken, there was no award and nothing. That does not have time limitation because it touches on issues of violation of the Constitution. But you have to come to court as soon as possible so that then you don't delay too much, so that the other party is disadvantaged in terms of defending themselves. But for those who are thinking that should I bring my matter to the tribunal, I think it's easy. Bring your matter. It will be resolved within the quickest time possible, and you will have at least a resolution of the question that you have.
It's only 1,000 bob.
Yeah.
Okay. So how many? When was this tribunal established? Actually,
it was established in the law in the year 2019.
19.
But we were appointed in 2023 of October of 2023, and that's when we started our work.
And what are your numbers looking like in terms of cases that you've been able to
Yes.
sort through?
We have, in that year we had about 2 or 3 filed, but over time the numbers have increased. We've had over 150 cases filed in the past 1 year. The past 1 month we had 45 cases filed. So the more the people get to know about the tribunal, the more they are, coming and embracing it and filing their cases. And we find that, for instance, in the many cases that were filed last month, it's a project that was done, in Nyatike, an irrigation project, where one person filed the case and the tribunal was able to resolve it quickly, and then the rest of them were like, okay, we also have, similar matters. That
I just think it's interesting that in the 2 years of actual work that is being done by the tribunal, that almost over 200 cases have already been brought against government in terms of seeking compensation. That's something to think on, isn't it? The chairperson.
But 94 have been resolved.
Yeah,
I think that's very important.
Of course, it's
well.
very important. I'm just saying that, that there's a lot, obviously, that people have been holding on to, and that where would they have gone had the tribunal not been established and started working in 2023. Thank you for the good work that you do, and it's interesting to hear, and then also getting a place where people can actually go to. The Honourable Dr. Nabil Orina is the chairperson of the Land Acquisition Tribunal, has been our guest on this Justice Thursday session. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning, 8 a.m.